Hey, you! Yeah, you! Do you want to warp through space and time? Well, if you read this book at the rate we're going, I think he's about to start talking about how to do that. Because this is some of the most esoteric, mystic shit I've ever read, and Jet has ever read. I can't speak for him, but I am speaking for him, because ain't no way he's read anything more mystic than this. And I had to do this episode now. I was going to do it tomorrow, but I had to now because I am manic after reading some of the stuff that I've read in there. It is driving me crazy. Okay, can you believe this? Guys, if you want something less, it's actually going to be more likely to come to you. Hang on, but let's unpack it though. Let's unpack it. Jet, where's the context for this? Because this is what he's saying.
So, the big thing here to consider and remember is really there is this idea that he posits known as the law of balance. And it's connected integrally to an idea called the excess potential, right? And essentially, it all is predicated on the idea, based on the idea that you have, well, that your thoughts have a sense of a power, really. That your intention and desire have power. And that the way you direct your thoughts, the way you direct your beliefs and ideas and desires actually has an impact not only on yourself, but the external world. And
he ascribes physics to these thoughts. Like he actually gives physical, almost tangible, palpable meaning to these thoughts.
Yes, and that's a whole other thing with the quantum, right? The quantum mechanics. And there's this whole space that he deems the alternative space, which is all about traversing these lifelines. And these lifelines, you can't change the line itself, but you do have the choice to move between these lines. And we will get into that.
And the alternative space comprises every single thing, basically.
Yeah.
Is that the best way I can describe it? You have unlimited, even though I don't think you can literally pick anything you want, but you do have unlimited options in this alternative space. You can do anything you want, essentially, is what he's saying. And you are dealing with this whole entire space, and you have the choice of grabbing it. But the reason why you don't have choice sometimes is because you're being influenced by other physical thoughts that have power over you, which he deems pendulums. And they're called pendulums because one person is pulling it this way, and then because the law of balance states that the natural state of things needs to be balanced, another person with the opposite point of view or antithetical point of view is trying to do the opposite and bring it back to state. That's why wars happen. That's why there are liberals and conservatives. That's why there are vegans and fucking cannibals. No, I'm just kidding. And meat eaters. You know, that's all that.
Right. And it's interesting because these pendulums, right, and the alternative spaces in general are all related to thoughts, right? It's basically this idea of your thoughts have an energy to them, a certain wavelength and vibration, and really the whole thing from there is that depending on what those are, right, what your thoughts are, what your lifeline is, they can translate to the physical world. And that this pendulum is really kind of just an external system in some sense. It's like, politics, right? The United States government. That's a pendulum of some kind. Your school club, right? Your school. A Discord server, right? Anything that has external influence over you that can pull your energy is a pendulum. Now, some pendulums are good or bad, but most of them are fairly destructive. And the whole thing you can do is that you want to make sure that you're ultimately that you are minimizing the amount of pendulums you are connected to. And that's because those pendulums, right? If you think about it, let's say the news, for example, mass media, if you're devoting your energy and time to that, that takes up a lot of time and a lot of energy. A lot of emotional output is put onto that, especially things in emotions like fear or anger. And so ultimately you're going to weaken your own influence. and that's not a good thing. And weakening your own energy and influence and mind is very, very something that we will go into and describe why that's such an issue.
Mm. Um, what I really want to figure out in this episode is, even though I already have an opinion, I want to discuss with Jet, is what this guy is saying in this book true or false? If it is true, this is the most groundbreaking information ever. Like, he teaches you. So there's physics, right? Which we operate in all day, every day. You know, like right now, me and Jen are filming this podcast. You know, I have my microphone set up here. However the computer works, all that kind of stuff. Metaphysics, beyond the physical, explains how to. It essentially explains how to operate the physics itself, because it's beyond the physics and it's modulating how. How do I explain this in a way that makes any sense?
Well, I guess it's like you're trying to say metaphysics is the world beyond the physical. It's physical.
Right, but how does it modulate physics? Like, explain
It's
that.
basically it's hard to describe other than what you do in that world, right? Where your path is will have a causal relationship to the physical world. Which is to
Okay, good enough. Good enough. Yep. And you learn what's important. You learn, how it should be operated. Like, I mean, yeah. In order to optimize some kind of mystical, intangible goal. This book elucidates what those goals are, pretty much. But like what optimizes the results that we as humans are looking for, which are strangely reductive in his description. So what he posits is that, I know this is such a mindfuck. This is so counterintuitive. By wanting something, you are pushing the pendulum, right, to go into a certain direction. But you know what happens, right? Comes back. It will cause the results to be more likely the opposite to what you initially sought. And then you wonder, well, how do you know that this whole pendulum thing really works like that? I thought about this earlier today while I was walking. And I was thinking, what are some examples that are just like, bullshit. I can't give North Korea as an example because, they don't know any other way except their own life. I can't. Yeah, it's hard to give those kinds of examples, but I thought about it and I really couldn't think of any example. My girlfriend, she's so funny. She told me she watched a documentary one time of the most disturbing stuff, and it freaked her out, right? And you know how documentaries are. It gives one very, very oddly specific story that's only happened uniquely to a few people, and then it's shown to the whole world, and then it affects the whole world's perception of reality just from that one instance. Like Jeffrey Dahmer, say, for example. It's like, when's the next time I'm going to go over to some guy's house and he's going to try to eat my heart? Anyway, she fainted at work the next day because she was so freaked out by that documentary and believed that it could happen to her. This has happened to her numerous times. She thought a bunch of scary things happened to her, and then as a consequence, she actually got nausea from it, and contracted illnesses because of it. Okay, in other words, you believe you're sick, therefore you're sick. The thought that you push into the world comes back to you, is what the book is explaining. All right, and I can think of more examples to support that than the opposite. What?
Thoughts as boomerangs. That's his whole idea there.
Yeah.
Because you have pendulums where you have a mass of people thinking the same thing, a system of people thinking the same thing, and doing that and taking your energy, and thoughts in general of their own accord are boomerangs. So, and this is the contrary idea, is that the more you want to avoid something, the more that thing, because you're devoting energy to it, creating excess potential, as he describes it, putting more energy into that idea, even if you want to avoid it, it won't matter. You'll find more of it. So it's like, oh, I want to avoid these monsters. Well, you're going to find more instances where you have these monsters, right?
Yes. So now a corollary of all this is you don't want to ascribe importance to things, which is like, really? Like, really? Okay, and I read this book. I'll tell you the truth. I read this book 6 months ago. I just went through the notes yesterday to remind myself what we're going to be talking about today. I read this book, and I was like, there's no way that it's expecting me to think of my work as less important. Like, I'm not going to achieve my goals if I don't decide that my work is important. I realized a couple of hours ago that it is in fact the opposite of that. That the reason why I haven't been achieving what I've been wanting to achieve is because every single day there's a voice inside my head telling me that I'm a fucking failure if I don't achieve such and such. I want you to think about this, okay? Jet, let's imagine your mom knocked on your door and she said to you, Jet, you are going to do this podcast with Henley, and you're going to do a damn good job of it. You're going to do the best podcast you ever can. And if you don't do this podcast, you're a fucking worthless human being. Okay, I don't even know. I don't even know where your future is going. How would you feel? Would you want to do it anymore? Like, or like, would that help you?
Probably not.
Right.
Or even if you did do it, well, then you now have a feeling that you have to do it every day, all the time. And if you don't, you're failing. So you can't.
Yep.
You.
Yep. And so it actually makes sense. This whole pendulum thing. It actually makes sense. Like, oh my gosh.
Very much so.
So counterintuitive, though.
It is very counterintuitive. And, well, it's the whole idea that I've been... Well, it's like, because you devote so much importance to it, right? Judging by his whole logic, you're basically putting so much energy into that goal, into that idea, that one, you're reinforcing the idea that ultimately, well, if you want it so much to the point where you're willing to risk, life or death for it, and to just do it no matter what, well, then a part of you says, well, ultimately, you're not able to do it. So that's one thing. And the other thing is that it's basically making it so there's always an equilibrium, right? That's the whole idea of the law of balance, in some sense. And that the universe is going to try to bring you back to an equilibrium of some kind. That's why a lot of the time people will do certain diets and they will come crashing back down, right? It's this idea that ultimately there's an equilibrium. And the only way you can change the equilibrium is if you have goals, but you're detached from them. Because if you put enough of energy into that goal, it will create this excess potential, and it doesn't matter if it's a good or bad goal, it'll bring it back to the center. So it's this weird counterintuitive idea where ultimately the goals where you are the least, it's not even invested in, because he says, no, you have to complete your goals and work with dignity, but it's more so that you put your self-worth into are going to be dangerous.
The way I'm looking at the way I'm looking at this, because I want to write about this in my book, and I don't like that I have to talk about stuff that I'm going to write in my book because I want it to be all new and valuable to the audience. But whatever, I have to do it. I think it's matter of fact that the work is important. It's matter of fact that if I do not complete X, Y, and Z, the consequences will be this. So that in and of itself should be a natural source of compelling to you to do the work,
Yeah. I mean,
you don't need to spam like brain power onto this thing. You know what I mean? It doesn't work.
Well, and that's the weird thing, though, because at least for me, there's this kind of idea that you want to well, you just want to focus on something, right? And you just put all your energy into it. It's like you just put all your energy into it. But that's the worst, that's, according to him, the wrong approach. Because ultimately, even if you have the intention to, even if you have the willpower to, it's you're still going to end up in a destructive place because you're fighting against nature itself. And that's why there's this idea of like detachment in some way, is that you have to be really to put as less a minimal amount of investment in terms of your image, self-esteem, worth into your goals as possible. Now, that's not to say that you're supposed to be self-deprecating. No, he says that's also negative as well. Pride and self-desecration are two sides of the same coin. It's like the whole thing is you're supposed to be in this medium, right? And you're supposed to see, okay, can I see a world in which I can not only get this goal, but I already have this goal achieved? That's kind of what it is, and not
Uh,
be immensely attached to it.
okay, thank you. You've now given me another segue. Um, okay, so supposedly, as I said, in the alternative space, there is everything, and by everything, I literally mean everything. Okay, do I have to say that again? There is everything, and the alternative space is available to you. It's to you, my friend. You can literally go do whatever you want. Um, But really though, because that claim in and of itself assumes so many things that to the typical reader, including you and I, we're going to be a little bit skeptical of it. Okay, we're less skeptical of it than others because I think, if I can say, we are pretty emotionally healthy. But a lot of people are stuck in this mindset that I am a victim to my circumstances. Okay, I have the right to be really upset and pissed off about the world and how it has treated me. And the only reason why my brilliance hasn't emanated to the whole world is because it's not my fault. It's other people's fault. It's the system. It's what I think this cynicism is what gets people discouraged from believing any of this sort of stuff. But what this assumes is that the objective reality doesn't necessarily have any bearing almost. It's like, even if you're locked in jail, you can somehow not live in jail or live as though you're not in jail. I don't know, man. It's like even though within the jail cell, you can swim within the few infinite alternative space, but it's like, bro, come on. you know?
Well, well, that's where you take it to the illogical extreme, right? And that's where it's like,
That's what he's saying though. So am I wrong? Like,
yeah, it's like, is this? Well, and I guess that's why people think a lot of this is like BS. It's like, how in the world can you just think about this? But now, with all intents and well, with that being said, he does say you have to listen to yourself and you have to have a unity between the heart and mind to do this. So, and that's not easy to do, which is fair, and you have to be constantly conscious of what you're thinking of. Constantly conscious, constantly aware of the fact if you were being sucked into another pendulum or if you're negative, your thoughts are being negative or detrimental in any way. So those are big caveats. However, it does in some sense seem that it's like, how in the world are you actually able to just like, okay, so long as you can imagine a reality in which this exists, you can move to that lifeline? Because that's what he's essentially saying. That so long as you can imagine that, so long as you can align it with what you want within your heart and soul, as well as your mind, and that you can see the reality not only where you want it, but that you get it and have it, while also being detached enough from that goal that it's not like, well, if I fail, I'll completely fall apart. No, you're okay with that scenario, but you still know you'll get it. It's a
Um,
weird contradiction.
yeah, yeah. Well,
It's
I'll say one thing that I realized is you questioning the validity of that. That, huh? Really? I can just imagine it. That I'm not so sure about that. I'll have to think about that. That implies that you don't believe in it.
yeah, yeah. Which
So and I didn't believe in what I was saying earlier as well about my work thing until I believed it because I was like, hang on a second. You know, I started to really think about it. I don't know
right,
how I
right.
came to that discovery, but I did. What?
Well, and it's not that because a part of me wants, well, I know that there's two sides to it, right? A part of me wants to believe that because ultimately, hey, you can make your dreams, all your dreams true. You can make everything real. Really? It's that simple? Even though it's not easy, because very few things really are worth doing are very easy, because being conscious of yourself, uniting and listening to your internal voice is not easy, especially with all the chatter in the world, right? That's difficult. But at the same time, well, it's taking ultimate accountability for yourself. I mean, the highest level of accountability, really, if you think about it. Because, well, if you're stuck in a lifeline, if you're stuck in a situation, that's on you, which is an uncomfortable thing to think about. But at least through this model, right? Um, obviously you can't change some things, but you can choose a lot of things. You can choose to improve yourself. You can choose to be better. You can choose all these different avenues, right? So I still need obviously a lot of time to think about this, and I'm even after the podcast, there's no way I'm gonna stop, thinking about this. And I mean, I'm not even done with the book. We're only 220 pages in.
Yeah, guys, we're only like
I mean, this is.
this
I mean,
much
this is.
in. We still have this much to go. Like,
Yeah, I mean, so ultimately, this is the. I mean, like, this is a whole new way of looking at the world, right? And he said, don't
yeah,
make it a religion, don't make it anything else special. It's just a different way to think about your position in this weird universe. That's basically it. And he brings in some ideas that we'll get to, I'm sure, with like hidden knowledge and dreaming and all that, which is definitely interesting. But it's still this is like kind of a revolutionary idea. A lot of revolutionary ideas in here, to say the least.
yeah, yeah. Let me try to find some notes as discussion points. Oh, I guess we can talk about the dreams, the lucid dreaming thing that you talked about.
Mm.
I personally, another thing is, I don't feel the need to constantly have freedom of choice, as he calls it. Like sometimes, what makes life cool is that you don't have
Mm.
total choice. Like if I had total choice about everything, I would probably make either spend a lot of my time in indecision and waste it, or I could make wrong decisions that would have been better to have had influenced by others. You know what I mean? But I guess that in and of itself is a choice in a way.
Well,
Maybe
right, that would be his argument, I'm sure.
he would be with his Russian look and think, yes, da, Henry. Like,
Well, I would assume so, at least. I would assume
yeah,
so.
I would assume so as well. So
Um, yeah.
um, now this connection that he makes between inner intention and outer intention, isn't didn't he say that the small part where those two things connect is access to the what?
So that is where those spots intersect, right? Where inner intention and outer intention meet is a very fine line and it's not well defined. And it's about the subconscious mind. It's
Yeah.
the subconscious mind because inner intention is very much akin to the idea of will. right? Very much akin to that idea. And it's linked to desire. Whereas outer intention is kind of the idea we talked about before, where you can change your lifeline, right? You can change the scenery in some sense.
And how did he by the way said in his book, I don't even know what outer intention is. I mean, that's not what he literally said verbatim, but that's basically what he said.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I can't really describe, unfortunately, what this mystical thing is,
Well,
but
yeah, yeah.
but
From the descriptions. Sorry, go ahead.
well, what I can say is he said if there were such a thing as outer intention exercises, because there's willpower training, which basically, by the way, is what my book is going to be about, the one that I'm about to publish. But then outer intention training, he doesn't even know what that would entail. He said it would be some strange exercise, like I don't know, but he says once you achieve outer intention, it doesn't take any personal I don't even know if it takes any personal volition anymore. At the very least, no personal energy is expended. It's simply, I decide that such is reality, therefore reality is that. So, and it's like, yeah, but it's not. And then it's like, well, guess what, buddy? You haven't mastered outer intention if that's what's going through your head,
Yeah. Um, and I mean, the best way that I visualized it is desire is like X marks the spot on a map. Inner intention is the lines you draw on the map, and outer intention is changing the map itself. Which is like
how can that be a personal
I don't know.
task?
I don't know. I don't know. See, that's the thing, right? That's why we are obviously not masters of this, to say the least. And there's still a lot of doubt, right? But it's the whole thing is that, and I'm sure he's going to get into this later on in his book, is how do you actually do this? And the first step, really, seems to be, well, finding what systems are you giving undue energy to? Another thing is, what ideas and beliefs and things are you afraid of and that you are giving undue energy to? What things do you idealize? What goals are you full-heartedly putting yourself into and not okay with failing? I mean, for example, let's say, I want to change the world, right? That's a very big goal, very abstract, kind of idea. But if you devote your whole life to that, you're never going to achieve it in some way. Or you will, but it's going to be way harder than it needs to be and not have the same impact. Which is so weird to think about. But basically, it's saying you have to be okay first with accepting the fact that you may not achieve that. And that's how you can minimize some of that emotional energy and some of that excess potential as a result. Yeah.
Man.
Yeah.
All right. I think lucid dreaming is a fascinating topic, but like.
Oh, that too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, because his whole thing there is I mean, yeah, that's interesting because he says that dreams, right, are basically like a distillation of reality in some sense, except the physical world is more fixed, and your rational mind, your conscious mind essentially, is not sleeping. So, or at least it's turned on, and so or turned off, so it just accepts things as possible, and that's why it's closer to the line of inner and outer intention, right? Because the subconscious mind's in control. That's his whole thing with dreaming in general.
I've Actually, wait. I just realized I was going to say I accept that that plate over there levitates and comes towards me, but then I realized that it's not possible because I don't genuinely actually believe that it will.
Well, see, that's the thing. Is you need to it needs if your heart believes it that it's genuinely true and that your mind also agrees that it can genuinely be true, then it will work.
So if I develop schizophrenia to get a little bit dark, then I'll be able to do this.
Well, this is the thing, right? Because it seems like that's what he would take. But I mean, like, if it really is, and it's not easy, but if it really is just changing the way your mind thinks about this, that is a scary, not scary, but that is like, oh my goodness, how in the world did I not know about this? How was this deliberately deceived or being kept from me? And it's like, how does this even work? Like, what's that say about reality if this works? Or is any of this real then? I guess this is just how it is, right? And his whole thing is that you can't understand every single bit of it because inherently humans just have a limited perspective to understand the world through. So we're never
Yeah.
going to have the whole truth.
Yeah, that's what
Well,
that's what I think as well. That's why it's almost like the God argument, which is um, like why I don't believe in God personally. One, I mean, there are many, many, many reasons why I don't believe in him, but one of them is like, if it is so obvious that he's real, then we're too skeptical, we're too logical to believe in him, and that's a consequence of him pretty much because he made us think the way we do. Like faith, I'm not just gonna believe in shit just because. Not even just because Vadim Zeland, who I love deeply, by the way, tells me to do it. I'm not gonna. That's not how we are. We have free will, and as a consequence of our free will, we decide not to believe in him. So, do you see how that doesn't make sense? You know.
well, I mean, right, is that why would an all-powerful entity make his prized disciples able to question his existence? Like, why bother?
And then be bothered when he doesn't exist. Then that
Yeah.
we don't believe that he exists. Yeah.
Well, I guess it's well, that's the other thing, right? Because it's one thing to be well, it's one thing to just have it be that he makes us, right? Because then you could say, well, ultimately, if he gives you free will, right, you can choose to believe in him or not. And that maybe the ultimate thing that he says is, well, if you can use your free will, if you can use your logic, and even despite all of this, you can still believe in me, you can still ascend to my presence, essentially. No, I don't know if ascend to my presence is the right word, but or phrase, but you know what? It's like you can still believe in me even with all this logic. That you can still have enough faith, then you are worthy. Like it's that's a whole other thing, though. That's not at all kind of what we're getting into now here, but it's it is kind of similar in the sense that it's like, how do you believe in all of this? How do you have that faith? And this is so funny because I've had this conversation before. How do you have faith, right? Um, it's very difficult because it inherently.
I don't think it's possible to do it authentically, necessarily. If there are contradicting ideas, you can't. I don't believe in the concept of faith. I think it's the opposite of reason, which obviously is against my value system.
Right, right, but ultimately there are things that are beyond reason, no? Other things that are unexplainable.
To us, but in our limited capacity to explain. Well, I mean, I guess not everything needs a reason. I guess that is true. Some things can be causeless, but
Yeah.
for things where the existence can either be proven true or false, such as with God, I mean, if there's contradicting evidence, which there's plenty of, then depending on who you ask, obviously, because all these things are all there, then like alarm bells are going to be going off in your head, reasonably.
Well, yeah, for sure. And that, but then again, it's like this whole idea, and I know you said you don't think that there is faith other than the antithesis to reason in some sense. Um, and I think that maybe that's ironically the power in it. This quote unquote power is that the reasonable mind, the rational mind, and the one that actually can create these reasons and logic in some way, I don't know if I guess it's limiting in some sense, right? Because, well, you can, with imagination, you can do anything, right? It's so maybe having faith that there is more to it, that this thing can work, and that even though you have a huge amount of doubt, you're gonna do trust in it anyways. For me, at least, the way I visualize faith is almost as though you were walking on a tightrope, right? And that even though the tightrope could break at any moment, even though you think that there's no way you can get to the other side, rationally, you have to believe that you can get to the other side regardless. That to me is the definition of faith. Because inherently there is doubt, inherently is uncertain. And if you're just shooting in the dark, right? Because it kind of is, you don't know. We don't know anything. It kind of, well, puts you in the situation where ultimately, who's to say, right? You just kind of have to go with the flow. You gotta have to believe it. And that's kind of what you have to do with, well, all this.
Okay, so I wanted to respond to that thought. I do believe some belief that it's possible you'll survive is important. Because I was thinking about this just the other night. I was thinking, what if I'm like trapped at sea and then I fall in the river and then it's really, really hard to swim up, and then I start drowning. I just had this really visceral imagination, and I was like, yeah, I would have to fight for my life no matter how difficult it is. I suppose then that it would be useful to believe I could make it out. But at the same time, I wonder if it would be more realistic and therefore more beneficial to believe the chances of survival are not 100%. You know, that there is a good, like a considerable chance you will not survive, you know, perhaps. Because then that might act as a motivator for you to get out of it. But then we come back to the projected importance argument that we were making before, which is that if you ascribe importance to things, they work against you.
Right, it's like if you need to do this because there's no other way to do it, and that if you fail, you're screwed, well, then it's very likely that that worst case scenario is going to come true. Or at least something along those lines will come true. And that's an interesting idea, to say the least. It's like, I don't know exactly. Well, because really, this idea of faith, right? And it's not just faith, but just being a person existing in this space and actually getting to the point where you can move forward in some sense. Like, that is, and you just continue plodding on every day. That is not an easy thing to do. And it's like, well, what do you mean by that? You can just live every day. You just do the same thing again and again. But it's having faith that things will get better, even when the world goes to crap. I mean, that's an example, right? That you think, well, even if the world goes to crap, I can still improve myself. I can still have some control over my fate to some extent. That despite the cards I was given, even with some of the disadvantages, I can still reach my goals. I would argue that's a kind of faith as well.
Right. But
And yeah,
I don't like faith. I just this word it triggers me, you know?
well, it's an uncomfortable thing to think about because we don't have any control over it. It's basically the most authentic, like I guess, like release of control in some
I
sense because you
wait.
realize,
I just realized. I guess I do have faith that my life is gonna be okay. I do. I don't even know if that's the right way to put it. It might a more accurate way to put it might be I live my life with the peace of one person would as one would when considering the good possibility or this the belief that things will be okay. Because I think intellectually I know I could die tomorrow, but
yeah,
I still live in comfort because that possibility feels very real to me that my life will be good, and it's the possibility that I latch onto the most, I guess you can say. Yeah. And
I
so,
think that's
if that's what faith is, I guess I can. I guess I can accept faith. Maybe. On a logical level, I still need to work through it a little, but we'll
well,
get there.
it's
Well,
not
we have
like
a lot
you're
of
never
episodes
going
to
to
go
get
until
knowledge.
we can reach enlightenment. I thought I was there today. We have a long way to go until we have reached enlightenment, but we're getting there. We are on the way.
Yeah, we that is yeah, that's a long ways away, and we're not going to become monks. That's for sure. Um, at least,
Ah, are you sure?
well, okay. I don't
Why
think I'm
not?
going to become a monk. I don't think I'm. You know, I doubt it. But um, with that said, though, I mean, well, if you want to become a monk, that's fine. I mean, hey, go ahead. No, props to you. That is not an easy thing to do. Holy smokes. But regardless,
I'm gonna become
it's
Buddha.
Buddha.
Then I can
Buddha.
create
Okay,
my own religion and then have monks follow me.
there you go. There you go. That's the whole plan. But
Yeah.
actually, ironically, the author said to not make a religion out of this as well, because then it creates a pendulum that will suck people's energy and it will ossify it and actually distill some of its meaning. So that's another thing to keep in
I
mind.
guess I guess I'm just gonna like I guess just whatever. I give up. I give up. You know.
um, yeah, you know, I think this whole idea is, and also with faith, you're never going to understand it logically because it's beyond logic. It's that's kind of that's its whole thing is you can't use the rational mind to understand it. It's an intuitive, it's an emotional thing. It's as he says, the heart knows and feels. The mind thinks and plans. Those two things don't coincide. Well, no, of course. And he said, it's not like he's saying to completely forgo the mind. That's not it. It's more so you have to be at least tapped into your heart so you can hear its messages and also realize that you're not going to understand everything. You're not going to be able to piece together everything, and that just imagine that you can transcend different ways to think about reality. It's almost like, hey, well, that's why it's called transurfing. You're surfing the waves of this metaphysical plane. You're going on to these different waves, traversing these different wave lines or lifelines because you can't change the line itself, but you can change the line that you're on.
But there are some things that require objectivity in order for you to know it.
Well,
and for those things you need to use the mind, not the heart, right?
it's
So now that leads me to another thing that I wanted to, I guess you can say, point out. This whole idea that you can traverse to other lifelines, it implies that objective reality outside of you, doesn't have power over you, kind of, right?
I guess I don't know actually
I
because
believe that's what it. I believe that is what it means.
yeah, to some extent, which is weird to think about because well, because his whole example of the fly hitting the wall, right, hitting the window, and that ultimately with outer intention, when you align the inner intention and well your heart and soul, right, your heart, soul, and mind, that you could see literally move to a lifeline where that window has moved just a bit so you can get through. Like, it kind of implies that you're right. Because that's the example he uses, which is a freaky thing to think about.
I realized today he could be right because because oh my gosh, how the hell do I explain this? when when you just accept whatever there is, you're taking away all the emotional dependence you have on things, right? On outside things to work the way that you are. I think the one exception for that might be when you're dead. But if I talk to him and say, yeah, well, what if some guy comes and shoots him in the head? Either he'll say one of two things. He'll either say, number one, well, he must have projected the negative energy into the world and that's why he got shot. Or number two, he's going to say, but then he's not alive anymore. Then, then he is not one anymore. It doesn't matter. I'm like, okay, but so long as you're alive, this idea of what doesn't kill you makes you stronger, because you're completely free to feel however you want inside. But then what if they starve you, and what if they do other? You see, this is where I get a little bit, I don't know, because say for example I had alcohol the other night. It was a mistake. I got very, very irritable, I think. Is that the right word? I wasn't in the right state of mind. My energy was sucked out of me. I don't react well to it. Coffee, I react fucking terribly to it. It's like yeah. If every single time I've ever tried, it doesn't matter how I think about it. It doesn't do me service. So how can this guy say these things don't have to affect us, unless he's saying, well, then there are chemicals in our mind, and then the chemicals in our mind are the determinant that he's talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. It's well, and the whole thing is this is like I think it's because even he mentions there's limitations to it, right? The whole thing is that even people, even monks who dedicate their whole life to this, they can only levitate, supposedly levitate above the ground, right? Only a few feet or so, a few inches or feet. Which means this is obviously not. I mean, I don't think you can completely change to a completely like different lifeline a million miles away in this alternative space, right? It's more so you're just moving to ones where you still have to put in the work to get to it anyways. It's just more so it's making it easier in some way. It's like you're shifting the paradigm of the world you're on just a tiny bit.
So then doesn't that mean you don't have a choice?
See, I think it's because you get to still choose how much you shift it. It's like you can almost
Okay, so let's suppose you're born in
Yeah.
North Korea. Oh no. I've used North Korea already. Let's pick on Ukraine now. Let's suppose you were born in Ukraine. Your country's getting bombed to shit. Okay, and then you become 5 years old, and then your father says to you, Misha, you're now the head of the family. I'm now going to leave. Bye bye bye. And then he. Oh wait. Let's say his dad gets bombed to shit, and then now he's the head of the family. Okay, I'm just trying to think of like
Yeah, the
an
worst
inadvertent
scenario.
event that this writer cannot justify. So then, like, now he's going to go from that to where you and I are. I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know.
well,
I
like
don't
that
know.
seems impossible, right? Because
Yeah.
ultimately, it's like, how in the world are you going to shift from that position? Like,
It's like I am going to adopt transurfing and
like I don't. Well, and see that this is the problem, right? Is you can do this, and it's like, well, that makes no sense. Obviously, there's a limit to it. Well, but then you know what? I'm sure he could argue, well, if you had enough of an intention, if you had it in your heart and soul, essentially, and you aligned it enough, you could find a way in which you could get out of Ukraine, you could leave Ukraine, go across the West, make it to America, and then somehow get everything else. It's
all
not
through
impossible.
transurfing, guys. This is all possible. I'm just visualizing a 5-year-old deciding, "Don't worry, guys, I got this. I'm gonna use transurfing."
Well, and then also you have the scenario, don't you, of the person who's not able to understand abstract concepts. How in the world are they going to understand?
Then they don't have a choice. Their brain simply can't do it. It's like,
Yeah,
it's like,
which is, yeah, I don't know in that case. Which means, yeah, that kind of implies that there is no choice to some extent. Or that maybe only certain
yes,
people,
there is a lack of a choice, indubitably.
or
Yeah.
yeah, or maybe certain people have choice while others don't. Maybe there is such thing as few that have been chosen, quote unquote.
I don't know.
But
Maybe
then
he's
still,
gonna maybe he's gonna rebuke it and just say, "Nah, guys, he's supposed to have um, an intuitive understanding of the malleability of reality, and he should have just done it."
yeah, which is like, I don't know, man. I don't know. That makes no sense. Um, well, and you know, again, this is a really cool idea, right? But it just seems so outlandish that people could move simply like through intentional thought, aligning with your mind and your heart, right? That you could, and innate and visualizing and believing full-heartedly that there is a possibility that you could go to a world, right? That you could have this problem solved, that you could move even a pencil without like thinking about it. Or not even thinking about it, but you could move a pencil even if it's just a tiny bit without touching it directly. And that somehow it will move. That you will go to a universe that it moves in some way. It just seems insane. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's because we don't know enough.
Oh yeah. Now this. Okay, I should bring up another conversation I had with a friend. He told me to read Think and Grow Rich, which I read the first quarter of that book. It's similar to Reality Transurfing. The difference is in Reality Transurfing, the guy actually explains how these things are possible, how this clairvoyance, if you will call it, is possible.
Mm.
And um, he, I was asking this guy, you know, why is it that I can't um, actually, no, it was a different friend. It was a different friend. This was a different friend. He's not the one who told me to read this book, but I got my concepts from that book, and I asked him why I can't say for example, pick lottery numbers and meditate like what are the lottery numbers going to be, and then pick those numbers. He said to me, because too many other people are trying to do the same thing.
Hmm.
So there's all this thought energy going on. Like, I want this number to be 26. I want this number to be 39. I want this number to be 58. Whatever, you know? It's like.
Well, oh, that's interesting.
So maybe because we are confined, because all these other people are disturbing what's possible
it's well,
with their limitation.
mm, and that maybe it's the whole map, right? This like metaphysical universe above ours, right? Because there's so many other pendulums, you're like you're almost on a ship swimming through this giant ocean, right?
Yeah,
And you have to go
if there
through.
are 8 billion other pendulums, theoretically speaking, plus all the other ones that are caused
Yeah.
by all those 8 billion people, how the fuck is yours gonna have power? You know?
Well, and I think the whole thing is that's why you express detachment, right? You remove yourself from as many pendulums as possible. You make it so your thoughts are as positive as possible so that you can get in the lines that traverse these pendulums in the best way, most effective way possible. Because you're never going to avoid all of them, right? You're never going to avoid all these systems. You have to attach yourself to some. But you get to choose which, well, that's an example of choice. You get to choose some of the ones you're attached to. Although, even then, can you really choose which country you're born in? No, not really.
Because
So,
you cannot do transurfing when you're in the womb. Isn't that sad?
no, maybe, probably not. Um, yeah, I don't know. I think ultimately we need to maybe read more to see if he addresses these arguments. But, like, if this is the baseline,
But
it still
we're at
seems.
222 pages in. I've already had like a million arguments, and he hasn't addressed most of them. You know.
No, no. I mean, I guess it's like, well, just believe it. Just believe it and see it for yourself. Do it. And it's like, okay. But the biggest hurdle is belief in and of itself. Because the only way you can actually do it or see it align with your desires is if you actually go through the process of detaching yourself from each everything and also like removing some of that tension, imagining the possibilities that exist. Because I mean, I think for you as well, but for me, definitely, it's like you can imagine that possibility where that reality where you have that goal is real, that you achieve that goal is real. That's not the issue. Because he says that's one part of the puzzle, right? You can have the desire and you can see the path. But even if you see the path, just thinking about it isn't enough. You can't just, well, as he said, you can't just sit on a sofa and think about it enough. That's not how it works. You have to put action into it as well. And it's like, yeah, I don't know. And the whole idea of like, oh, this is just easy, or this is not even very full of effort, also seems like a strange thing because the whole idea, and he would argue that this is just the paradigm we've been raised in, is that in order to achieve what you want, it's possible to, so long as you put in the effort to get it. But that seems to be in some way conflicting with what he said. Because ultimately, if you've put enough time and effort into something to the point where you just want to achieve it relentlessly, well, wouldn't that create excess potential? And therefore, bouncing forces are going to come in, and therefore, you're going to be, well, you're going to be in a worse position as a result. Because the universe itself is going to try and bring you back to an equilibrium. And so, ultimately, it's almost as though, well, you kind of can't win. And that's the whole argument he makes, is that you can't fight against it. You can't just dedicate yourself to one thing and put in all your effort and try and say, okay, this is what I'm going to do, this is what I'm going to achieve, this is how I'm going to do it, and hope for the best. because that's not how it works. That's not how reality works, because this law of balance, when you create excess potential, will inevitably bring it back to the media. And that's why people can work and work all the time and get nowhere.
What questions do you have to ask me based on like what do you want me to what are you
Yeah,
thinking about that you want me to respond to?
well,
What's
I
perplexing you?
mean, there's this idea. I mean, like there's a lot, but there's this idea though that I've thought about with, and it's really related to desire in some way. Desire and this idea of like action and goals and fighting for it, which is to say, what we just talked about essentially, which is to say that if you dedicate yourself to a goal, right? Because especially if one you think, or dedicating yourself to something larger than yourself, right? Let's say you want to change the world in some way. Let's say you want to make a massive scientific discovery or to make a mass revolution, some major social movement, right? Because a lot of the things that people are facing nowadays, especially with the meaning crisis and that what the heck does all of this mean, is that you can devote yourself to something of your own creation in some sense. That you create a goal, you create a legacy for yourself. And it's not just a tangible legacy, but it's not even for the actual outcome itself. It's more so the process of it that you can connect yourself to so that you can live, right? So that you can have meaning in your life. And I'm curious what he would think about that, as well as to how he would address the idea of does that create excess potential? Because if you're willing to even sacrifice your life to do it, even if you know it won't succeed, is that still, but it aligns with your heart and soul. Everything is aligned in that way. Are you, is,
I think his argument is if it really is aligned with your heart and soul, you should be good.
yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess even if you're putting so much excess potential into that, though, would the world still not try and bring you into balance, even if it is aligned with your heart and soul? Or would he argue essentially that because it's still in alignment, the outer world, that outer intention, will guide you into a lifeline where you achieve that outer goal? I guess so.
I don't know, but I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing, and if it doesn't work, I am going to change my thing, and that's where I want to lead this whole conversation to, which is, you can read Think and Grow Rich, you can read Reality Transurfing, you can mentally jerk off as much as you like. At the end of the day, you need to practice it and have experience, and that is how you will figure out if any of this is real or not. And really understand for yourself where these ideas are coming from. Because I wouldn't be able to talk about these things if not for the experiences that I've had consistently over the last years. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, at some point, and even he says this, you have to put in action, right? You can't just think about it. It's not just manifestation, right? You know, the whole TikTok girls, all those things about, oh, I can just manifest this into reality. That's not going to work. That doesn't work. You can set an intention. You can, and although the one thing I will say that he's really good at is this idea of detachment, and that if you actually really think about what you're giving your energy to, if you really think about all your actions and whether you actually have an intention for them or if you're just on autopilot, that being conscious of everything you're doing and enjoying the moment as a result of it, then that is a really good way to actually listen to your heart and soul, to listen to that internal voice, and to realize, well, what am I being attached to? Where am I losing my energy? I think that he does very well. And regardless of whether or not I believe the actual methodology and system that he has created, I think that alone is an incredibly useful tool. But then again, is that really going to lead? Maybe, it's weird because in some sense, I think one of the beauties of life is the fact that you can be attached to things. He would probably argue that it drags you down.
Yeah, what he says is that pendulums are inherently destructive. But then he also said you have to be under a pendulum. So it's like, okay, well then your life is inherently destructive. But I think definitely I don't think you should look at them as they're bad, because they're part of life, and life is good. Life is beautiful. You guys, right, guys? Right? Isn't life great? Yeah. So, yeah, that's what I think.
Well, I think, really, it's like you can look at them, even if you look at them as just energy sinks, right? Not all energy sinks are necessarily bad. Do you want to devote some of your, like, especially if it's something that you want to devote your time to? Like, if it's a running club that gives you joy and satisfaction, if it's an institution that you run and that you were proud to be a part of, and that it actually helps people as a result, that's a good pendulum to be a part of. Or at least, even if you're losing some of your energy, you're at least part of something that is connected to your heart and soul. So really, it's just, I think I see it as kind of this transurfing, sorry, as kind of a vetting process in some way. It's a vetting process to see what is taking my energy, and is this the life I'm actually living? Is this the life I really want to live? Which is kind of related to our first episode of The Actor and the Target. Am I really living in the moment? Am I actually enjoying all of this? Or am I just slogging away to something that I'm not even truly in alignment with?
Right. And what I got from this book also is that you cannot kid yourself about what you want. If you have to talk yourself into something, it means you don't want it. Okay? You can give all the reasons in the world. If your heart isn't in it, you can't force it. You can't say to it, you listen, if you just follow this regimen and live in hell for the next 5 years, then you could become a multimillionaire. And then the heart will say, yeah, okay, great, but I really don't give a shit. So I mean, you can try to cajole me as much as you like. I'm not going to change my mind. And that's the whole entire quandary that I've been in lately. And I'm just starting to realize that I can tell myself that I will live in utopia in 10 years only if I suffer for the next 10 years. I don't want to do that. And you know what? I will honor that. I will honor that is not what I want and live accordingly. Great. Isn't this so nice? I'm connecting with my inner world. This is what this is all about, guys. This is why we do this for you, so you can connect with your inner world. The greatest gift you can ever have. We can give you bread, food, everything that a caretaker can give to you. No, we give you more than that. We give you more. Yeah.
Well, we give you nourishment of the soul, so to speak.
Yeah.
Nourishment of the soul. You want to make your world better? Well, because ultimately, the outer world is a reflection of your inner world. So if you improve your inner world, well, your outer world will probably improve.
It's very obvious to intellectual people like you and I are going to think that the soul has precedence over the mind and the body at times, but yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah. Well, it is what it is, right? There are things about this universe we can't change, and that seems to be one of them. Yeah, it's kind of a weird thing to think about. And
How's it weird?
sorry?
How's it weird?
Well, I guess it's like, it's weird to see just how powerless we are in some sense. it's like, oh my goodness, there's so much that even though I know a decent amount, even though I can learn and read every book and try and understand this universe, try and use all these different tools and lenses of this giant habitat that we are, right? What the heck are you even, right? You can use all these different things to understand the world. That ultimately, you're never going to understand all of it. It's just going to be a little portion of this giant mosaic. And that you can expand that tapestry. You can expand your little patch on the mosaic, but you'll never encompass the mosaic. So, yeah, that's why it's like, it's weird to think about that ultimately you can do a lot, you can change, you can have all this, but you're never going to understand all of it. That's okay.
Hmm. That is one thing I want to talk about in one episode eventually. Because when you think about it, even if you learn so much, even if you become like one of those people on those uh, TV shows where they answer a lot of questions, and if they get more right than their other competitors, then they make a bunch of money. Even if you become that person and you like, borderline Einstein, there is still like so much information you don't know. Like so much you don't know. When is the journey ever gonna end? You know.
Never. It never
So
ends.
yeah, and when you think about it like that, it kind of diminishes the importance of knowledge searching for its own purpose.
Well, yes and no. Because I would argue, even though you're never going to understand all of it, the more you understand, the more you can grasp not only the immense, I guess, void, not, I don't know about void, but like the mass, like, immensity and just grandness of the universe in some sense, but also you can understand and appreciate things more deeply because you can understand and see more of the facets than someone who is more ignorant of.
Right,
Who's
but
more ignorant of
my
it.
point is even that is going to be really really finite compared to what it
Oh,
could
no,
be.
it is finite. It is finite, but everything's finite. We ultimately don't live forever.
No, so there could be another person. Like it's a food chain. On top of you, there could be another
Yeah.
person who's looking at you and saying, "Whoa, this guy thinks he's smarter because he's smarter than that other person, but really he doesn't know all this because I know all this." You know?
Yeah, yeah, no, no. I know what you mean, but ultimately, I guess it's like, or more so than ultimately, but it's really just in the
I
end.
think you just like saying that word anyway. Go on.
I do, I know. In the end, it's really more so just, well, you can understand. You Knowledge can be used as a tool to understand more of the world around you, and even though you're never going to understand all of it, you can at least appreciate things on a deeper level than you would otherwise. And that's why, if you want to understand things more deeply, and not just understand, but feel them, experience them more deeply, get more out of it, having knowledge of an event can actually improve it. That's
You
what I
know
would
what?
argue knowledge is.
You are right. You're right. You're right. Cool. I think we ended here.
Yeah.